This is Atomic Shinobi and today I'm going to narrate what if Naruto was gifted an hollow father by Kami. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Not wasting no time, let's start the story.
It was rare for Sosuke Aizen to lose his temper, much less in combat. He was left to deal with the 13 captains of the court guard squad, the head captain, and his previous unsuccessful experiments that the idiot Urahara had rescued after the majority of the Espada had been slain, including by his own hands, his chef lieutenants Jin and Chusen. He came to the conclusion that retreating would be the wisest course of action, but the move cost him dearly, nearly half of his spiritual pressure in his left arm, which Yamamoto had burned to ashes and had not yet regenerated. He would have the mortal girl cure him, gather the rest of Espada, and assault another when the chance arose, leaving him exposed and now on his way to Las Noches. He felt a tremendous spiritual weight as he staggered into his royal room, as though all the Espada were assembled and waiting for him. To his amazement, the room was empty, but he could hear clapping. To find out who was producing the noise, Azian turned to face the far end of his throne. It was Grimjow Jaegerjaquez, the 6th, ranked Espada. Grimjow got up from the chair and said, "Welcome back, Aizen. Enjoy yourself, looks like you had all the fun without me." Aizen grasped his arm and murmured, "Where are the other Espada, Grimjow? I suspect the Soul Society will attack." "Hee hee ha 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 ha, they already did, everybody's dead, Ulquiorra, Naruto, the whole lot, well except me. I almost died and was left for dead. But I have a question, Lord Aizen, what about those you took with you?" Grimjow paused for a moment. "You mean Tia Haribel? I know all about you too. And to answer your question, she's dead, by my hands," Aizen said with a smile, but his eyes widened and he was barely able to dodge the Sero that was aimed at his chest. The huge presser that was exploding from the area was enough to make the building tremble. Trying to gather his thoughts, Aizen said, "How did you gain this much power?" Grimjow ripped off his upper jacket, revealing an X on his chest instead of a number, and declared, "Since all the other Espada are dead, that makes me top dog now. It doesn't matter, even in my weakened state, I'm more than able to finish you," Aizen said. Grimjow grinned before giving the man a ferric uppercut that sent him flying and sonidoing, flash-stepping, in front of him. Before Aizen could recover in midair, Grimjow was behind him, knocking him back to the earth before he could make contact. "Enough!" exclaimed Aizen, causing Grimjow to fly across the room with a great deal of spiritual pressure. Grimjow grinned as he pulled out his Zanpakuto and lightly touched his finger. Grabbing his Ryast with his left hand, he cried out, "Gran Re Sero!" Blue energy erupted violently around his palm before exploding at Aizen, blowing off the top half of him. However, he started to regenerate, including his left arm, after a short while. When his head returned, Aizen exclaimed, "Did you forget, foolish Grimjow? I'm immortal, whatever you blow up will grow back." Grimjow glanced at the ground before grinning and approaching his sword. "Then I'll blow you up into so many tiny pieces you won't be able to regenerate," he said. Grimjow said the words, "Grind. Pantera," while clutching his weapon, and then blue light whirled around him, reviling him in his resurrection form and generating a shockwave that destroyed some of the roof's supporting timbers. When the now morphed Grimjow arrived behind him, Azian's sneer disappeared. He swung his unsealed blade, failing to locate him, before being attacked from behind and landing his opponent's elbow in his stomach. Grimjow exclaimed, "Gara de la Pantera," which sent spike like projectiles flying across the room, impaling Aizen in his throne, and then exploding. Without waiting for him to recover, Grimjow leapt into the air and readied his most powerful blow. He curled his claw-like hands and extended his arms in battle. "De Garen!" Grimjow shouted as he slashed his hands violently, throwing the blue energy in the form of his claws to the debris where Aizen was, causing the floor to fall. Aizen came flying out of the darkness, and he felt a sudden surge of spiritual pressure. He was still recovering from the onslaught that Grimjow delivered, and most of his clothes were torn and burned. He winced as the smoke cleared and the deep canyon that reached to the bottom levels of Las Noches appeared. "You can't beat me, Grimjow. It's poundless," Aizen remarked, giving Grim the finger in response. This enraged him so much that he charged at him with his sword. Grimjow grinned as he prepared his sharpest weapons and hurled himself at the approaching Aizen. Grimjow kneed him in the side after slashing into his sword and impaling him from behind with his left hand. He spun rapidly, transforming into a mind cyclone that carried Aizen with him before sending the former Soul Reaper flying back into the abyss. He was starting to feel the effects of the struggle, using his right hand to power a Descaran and his left to power another powerful Sero. A structure that resembled a black box began to develop around him before he could launch his attack. Aizen spoke gently, "Hado number 90, Kurohitshug," as she appeared a few feet in front of Grimjow. His entire body ached as the final bit of blackness enveloped him, as if attacking his spiritual pressure. It was difficult to tell, but he started to black out. When he opened his eyes, he was in the endless desert of Hueco Mundo rather than Los Gnosis. When he turned around, he was astounded to see Harvey approaching him in her resurrection from mining the enormous sword. Haribel, Grimjow muttered, caressing her cheek with his clawed palm, eliciting a warm smile. No, Grimjow. I'm dead, she murmured sorrowfully. He closed the distance between them and said, Does this mean I'm dead too? Before giving him a full lip kiss, which he happily returned, she whispered, No, you're not. I'm here to be your strength, but you must make the sacrifice. But more than that, he felt his spiritual pressure rise, and she gently withdrew, fading away like the dewist in the breeze. She whispered, I love you, and then she vanished into the wind. Aizen grinned, believing he had defeated Grimjow, but it soon disappeared due to the intense spiritual pressure that knocked him to his knees. His eyes widened as the black coffin burst, disgusting Grimjow with glaring crimson eyes. Grimjow was behind Aizen, his clawed hand piercing his chest, and Aizen glanced back, gazing intently into Grimjow's crimson eyes. As he raised his free hand and started to concentrate all of his spiritual pressure into a deep black sorrow that swallowed both of their bodies, Grimjow's face stayed the same. The words, What are you doing? Caused Aizen to lose all sense of his composure. Grimjow stated bluntly, making the sacrifice. You fool, you'll die too, Azrian screamed as he coughed up something he hadn't seen in a while, his blood. The Panther King declared, Then I'll see you in hell, fully charging and firing his Sero, which totally destroyed Los Gnosis. Grimjow knew that he had killed Sosuke Aizen, but he didn't care how long he flouted in the black abyss after passing away. He noticed a woman standing upside down when he looked up. She wore a scarlet kimono with black stripes running the length of it, and she had white hair. Hello Grimjow Jaegerjaquez, murderer of Sosuke Aizen, last of the elite Espada, you have quite a name in the underworld. Since you know so much about me, who are you? Grimjow inquired. Kami. I'm sure you've heard of me, she replied. Kami? As in creator of everything, Grimjow remarked doubtfully. Kami waved her palm, revealing an image of a gigantic nine-tailed fox demolishing a village's walls. Yes, but that's not important. What is? Well, let me show you, she replied. What the devil is that? He asked, appearing to be able to walk at this point. Kyubi, the Demon King and nine-tailed fox. Kami responded, my little brother, which astonished me at the end. You're a young man? Grimjow crossed his arms and asked. Yes, and our relative, the Shimigami, is supposed to have sealed him into a newborn boy named Naruto Uzumaki, Namikaze. The fool believes that his town will respect his final desires regarding him being seen as a hero, but his father is going to seal him inside the boy. However, I've seen what the boy's future holds. Kami waved her hand and stated, I witnessed the abuse, the discrimination, being treated like an outsider all my life, and being killed at the young age of 6. To put it mildly, it annoyed Grimjow. Grimjow screamed, What the hell's wrong with those people? With a note of bitterness in her voice, Kami remarked, Mortals can be very ignorant at times. Grimjow Jaegerjaquez. I want you to go there before the sealing starts, protect the boy his entire life, and be his father. Also a word of warning, the Shimigami may take you spiritual pressure and give it to the boy. It will combine with his chakra, as they call it, and it will adapt, and eventually if you train him right he'll become and Kami said with authority. Grimjow questioned, and why should I help you? Knowing she hit the mark, Kami asked, how about being reunited with your beloved Harrisbell in the next world when you finally die? After a brief pause, Grimjow responded, fine. I'll raise the brat as if he were my own. Grimjow dematerialized as she waved her hand and murmured, good, now be gone. Beyond the walls of Konoha. Minato. Please, don't. A redhead begged as she lay on the ground with a blonde baby in her arms. The blonde Hokage remarked, Kushina, I'm sorry. It's the only way to save the village, as he knelt down and grabbed the baby, causing it to flail and the mother to sob uncontrollably. Damn the village. You honestly expect them to honor your last wishes, huh? They make his life a living hell, Kushina yelled. When Minato saw the demon fox, it shrieked, Rog, run you pathetic mortals. Run. Minato closed his eyes to concentrate the chakra required to summon the death god. With a growl, the Kyubi lunged toward the little family, prepared to rip them to pieces. He was within striking distance when an unknown force knocked him to the ground. He looked around fast and saw a man with blue hair standing in front of the blonde Hokage. Who are you? Minato asked tremblingly. Grimjow said, I'm Grimjow, and I'll be raising your child after you're dead. Please, protect, Naruto, was Kushina's final statement prior to dying of a childbirth complication. Minato sobbed over his wife's passing. Very well. Don't let him know I'm his father. Grimmjow snapped, a little irate that the father didn't want his son to know about him. Shut the hell up and do the seal already, he said. Minato obeyed and focused by closing his eyes. Grimmjow turned to face the 9 tails that were now standing. The Kyuubi shouted, "You foolish mortal! You think you can defeat me?" The Flash stepped sarcastically on the enormous beast's muzzle, but grimly, "Why does that sound so familiar, ha 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 ha?" Grimmjow grinned sinisterly and said, "Your sister sends her regards." He then slammed his left hand into a fox demon that had wide eyes. This put it off balance a little, but it swiftly swiped its huge paw at Grimmjow, who intercepted it with both hands, causing it to fly across the air. "Ha ha ha, that all you got?" was Grimmjow's way of getting even with the Fox Lord. Kyuubi struck Grimmjow in the side with one of its tails, but it was able to grip another tail and was now being thrown around in the air. Grimmjow screamed, "Anytime now, ass!" Hole, to Minato, who received a tick mark. When he opened his eyes, the Shimigami materialized behind him and fired at the Demon Lord in black chanies, one of which severely damaged Grimmjow's stomach. Grimmjow released some of his spiritual pressure and sprang back to where Kushina was. As he landed on his feet, he witnessed the Shimigami draw its demonic blade and cut the shackles, generating a flash of white light. When Grimmjow was able to see again, he found Naruto sleeping in his arms and Minato lying on his back by his wife. When Minato said, "Take him, with my blessing, when he's old enough, tell him, the Shimigami had already taken his soul before he could finish. Grimmjow was startled when he picked up the sleeping boy in his arm. The right side of Naruto's face developed an animal jaw that resembled Grimmjow's, his hair turned a pale blue, and a light green tinge developed beneath his eyes. Grimmjow pondered, "He probably got my fetchers because that Shimigami took a chunk of my spiritual pressure." Suddenly, an old guy in battle armor appeared close to the Bodhi, followed closely by Ambu. After noticing the boy's fetchers, the elderly man asked, "Who are you and what are you doing with the Hokage's son?" "I was sent here to raise the boy as my son, and his name is Naruto Jaegerjaquez." 3 hours after the Kyuubi attack, a councilman yelled, "We must kill it," and an emergency meeting was being called. Fugaku Uchiha yelled, "No, it has to be turned into a weapon. Make it bend to our will." "No. The boy is the late Yellow Flash's son. Did you not hear what his last wishes were?" said the Sandame. "It is the council's will," exclaimed Homura, causing everyone in the room to feel as though gravity had descended upon them. A blue-haired badass then kicked in the door of the council room while carrying a hank of matching blue hair. A councilman shouted, "How dare you!" interrupted the honored Coun, but his head quickly turned to ashes. Grimmjow shook the infant with his free hand and remarked, "Bala." He woke the kid up. Homura angrily asked, "Is that thing?" but was paralyzed by the increased spiritual pressure permeating the space. "That," Grimmjow said in a tone that was chilly and icy. Fugaku activated his bloodline and exclaimed, "Your son? Douse that make you a demon?" "He's my adoptive son. I was sent here by the top of the food chain. I saw what you would do to the boy, how he would be beaten, discriminated, hated and finally murdered. That will not happen. I will level this place to the ground without a second thought. I will kill anybody and everybody that stands in my way. And to answer your question, no, I'm something far worse than any demon, hollow or Shimigami. I am the former 6th Espada, Grimmjow Jaegerjaquez and now adoptive father to Naruto Uzumaki. Namikaze Jaegerjaquez. It would be in your best interest not to forget it," Grimmjow said in a deadly tone, almost daring them to try anything. The third Hokage said respectfully, "You appear to be his biological father. The boy obviously has your fetchers." Grimmjow thanked Kami in silence for providing him with some insight into how this world functions. "The reason he looks like me is because when that overgrown rat was being sealed, the Shimigami took a good chunk out of my spiritual pressure, and what I was told was it will adapt and infect his entire chakra system and convert it over into a hybrid-like form of energy." Danzo said, "We must have him in the root program immediately," and motioned for 3 root ninjas to launch an attack on the former Espada. At his command, the root leapt downward, landing on the floor lifeless except for one without legs, and Grimmjow grinned. W.8. The nin begged, and Grimmjow kicked his head off, landing it on Danzo's desk. The ancient war hawk was killed along with a few others who would not be missed, and Grimmjow's words, "Sero," caused a deep red beam to blast out at him, leading them to flee the building. Grimjow grinned and increased the pressure till you could feel her bones fracturing. Anybody else have any stupid comments? She asked. The ancient Hokage, barely clinging to his brill table, begged, please, stop. Grimjow cradled Naruto, who appeared unmoved by the presser, and questioned, and why should I? When Grimjow lowered his strength, Sarutobi and everyone else exhaled a huge sigh of relief. Because I, too, love the boy as a grandson, Sarutobi murmured. Grimjow raised an eyebrow and replied, oh you do? And how'd I know this isn't some poor attempt for me to not kill you? His father was like a second son to me, and his mother was a rare flower that died far before her time, and I see that boy as the hero that has taken a massive burden and saved us all from death. I would die to protect him. The third Hokage remarked with a somber gaze. I'll hold you to that promise, old man. Now to discuss where we are going to live, stated Grimjow. Well, since you know of his heritage, I will allow a fraction of the fortune to be withdrawn from his clan account for you to provide a home environment for him. The rest will be given to him when he reaches proper age. Sarutobi replied that he appeared to be standing again. Homura screamed, you are negotiating with that monster, but was quickly pulled off the ground by her throat. Grimjow yelled, listen to me you old bitch, piss me off and I'll show you what a real monster is, before hurling her aging body against the wall. Her old teammate hurried to her side and yelled, Homura. He yelled, she still has a pulse, as the medic Nin entered the room. Grimjow spit out the word, pathetic, as he left the room with a sleeping Naruto. Hokage, is that wise? I hold no ill will against the boy but the masses will want blood, said Shikaku Nara as he stood up. The elderly man grinned and added, well, then they can meet his new father. I won't accept this, it must be made a weapon for the sake of Konoha, Fugaku yelled. The chief of the Aburame asked reasonably, for Konoha or the Uchiha clan? Before storming out of the destroyed room, the elder Uchiha merely sneered. Konoha streets. 1:42 a.m. Grimjow had just left the Hokage building where the meeting had been held, and he now had enough money to purchase a suitable house for them both. Hand the demon over now, stated a voice. Grimjow turned to find a sizable crowd made up of Chunin, Jonin, civilians, and a few Ambu. Before increasing the pressure, Grimjow grinned and stated, ha 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 ha, this is where I come in. Most of the group fell to the ground, while some of the more experienced were on their knees. Grimjow drew a pantera with his free hand and exclaimed, ha ha, this is what a real demon looks like. He then proceeded to the defenseless bunch. That evening, the Uchiha compound. Unless it was for a very good reason, Fugaku Uchiha disliked being woken up in the middle of the night. Fugaku Uchiha, a man called from behind his clan door. Yes, answered the clan chief, who opened a door to reveal a root Nin. The Nin bowed and continued, I have an offer for you. He accepted the sealed scroll. He read it quickly and ferociously, tearing off the wax seal as he went, grinning evilly at every word. Smirking beneath his mask, the root Nin asked, does this mean you accept, Uchiha Sama? Smiles, Fugaku exclaimed, yes, of course I accept. Permit me to address you as Fugaku Sama, leader of the root, for the first time. The following morning, the Hokage office. To his dismay, Sarutobi was now the third Hokage again. He had only recently begun retirement, and it's safe to say that he missed it and the ability to move his right arm because Grimjow's might had broken it. However, he had a duty to Konoha, as well as his grandchildren Naruto and Konohanaru. Anbu stated, Hokage Sama, there's something you need to see, as he suddenly materialized in a whirlpool of leaves. And what is that? The elderly guy asked, holding onto his makeshift cane. The Nin sadly remarked, look out your window and at the streets. The entire group of civilians, Chunin, Jonin, and Anbu were scattered across the street. Some were decapitated, others were charred to the bone, and still others were just blown in half. From the Hogake's perspective, the Sarutobi saw something that others would not have seen, and writing, Pantera, in a huge amount of blood beneath the bodies made his blood run cold. The Nin said, uncertain of the elderly man's response, Hogake Sama, what is it? Sarutobi remarked, half smiling, I think the boy is in good hands. On the outskirts of Konoha, 4 years later, a boy, who appeared to be 4 years old, with light blue hair, dark whisker marks, and an animal jawline adorning his right cheek, appeared out of thin air. He was wearing a simple black shirt, red shorts, and shinobi sandals. It was a relatively calm day in Konoha, with the grass being green and birds singing. Everything seemed perfect until several series of red-high-powered beams scorched the land and the poor defenseless animals. Yeah, did you see that, Dad? the young lad exclaimed excitedly. You have mastered the bala, Naruto. That's my child. Grimmjow patted his son on the head and said, now we'll start on the Sero. Oh my god, yeah, jumping up and down, Naruto remarked. Apparently, he also inherited Grimm's mouth and attitude. Grimmjow thought, dang, he already got the bala down, his hierro activated not long after he was born, and now his skin was as hard as steel and he can use the Sandio. Along with his Arankar abilities developing at a fast rate, his more natural qualities were rapidly appearing as well. The kid was able to talk at 6 months, walk at 1 year, and his stamina was off the charts. Grimmjow watched his son destroy a tree line with a barrage of bolas. Grimmjow pondered, I wonder when his Zanpakuto will appear, maybe the fox will affect it. He was aware of the Kyuubi and had even spoken to him a few times. Can we go get some ramen, Dad? After burning the majority of the trees, Naruto requested Grimmjow. When Naruto noticed the signs of 3-root nin observing, he started to smile like his father and said, sure, son, but first we have to deal with the people spying on us. Grimmjow's smile was wicked. Is that it? Ha 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 ha. Naruto asked before erupting into a menacing chuckle fit for an old man. Before yelling, Bala, Naruto sprang high into the air and started spinning fiercely. Hundreds of crimson beams erupted from the spinning cyclone, devastating the ground and any remaining trees. Naruto stopped his assault and flouted back to earth gently. Can we have some ramen now? Grimmjow smirked as Naruto requested in a beseeching tone. As they returned to the main settlement, Grimmjow grinned and said, yeah, let's go. Root HQ. Later that day, Fugaku Uchiha roared, damn it all to the deepest circle of hell, and threw the report he had just been given on the ground. We've lost 5 teams this month, including that one. Even though he had returned his composure, the elder Uchiha was still furious. I'm confident Danzo wouldn't be experiencing this issue. Should I be aware of anything else? Fugaku rubbed his temple and spoke. Yes, Fugaku. Sama, it appears your son, Itachi has conspired to liquefy the Uchiha clan on orders from higher-ups. Your predecessor orchestrated this event along with the Hyuga elders. The messenger from Root said humbly. The Uchiha clan's threat is finally recognized by those narrow-eyed bastards. I will visit Itachi later, so have him arrested and imprisoned, Fugaku Uchiha ordered the Root Hokage's office. Right now. The old Hokage uttered in a weary tone, sigh Grimmjow, that's the 3rd destruction of property charge this week. The response from Grimmjow was straightforward. I was training Naruto. Are the methods really so harmful? The 3rd inquired. Grimmjow remarked with growing excitement, yes, that was just the bala, ha ha ha, wait till he learns the Sero or even his resurrection form, haha. The elderly guy said, Kami, help me, Grimmjow. How is Naruto's training going? Good. His hollow hole will appear in the next few years along with his Zanpakuto, revealed Grimmjow. Sarutobi remarked, I think it may be time to enroll young Naruto into the academy, with caution of Grimmjow's strength. At the conclusion, Grimmjow grinned and remarked, yeah, that would probably be best, haha, he might even kill a student or two. The 3rd added, let's try to have none of that, as Grimmjow Sandio left the room. Current Root interrogation cells, currently bound to the floor in the center of the chamber. With his arms spread wide and Chikura suppression seals adorning his body, Itachi Uchiha looked up to see his father, flanked by 2 Roots. Father, Itachi said, but the person he was speaking to gave him a vicious backhand. You no longer have the right to call me that, so please stop. You deceived me as well as the clan. Fugaku yelled as he repeatedly struck Itachi in the face. You would rekindle global conflict for the benefit of a single clan. Itachi stated in a monotone, I'm ashamed to call you father. You arrogant fool. Before viciously striking his kid several times, Itachi's father screamed. I've got something better in store for you, my son. I won't murder you. You claim to be embarrassed about belonging to the clan, thus I'll grant your wish to deny your Uchiha ancestry. This was the first of the eternal darkness that Itachi would see for the rest of his life. Your eyes will be cut out and surgically implanted to Sasuke when he comes of age, and you won't die so easily, and when the time comes, Sasuke will kill you to gain the Mangekyo Sharingan and lead the Uchiha clan to the ultimate greatness that rightfully belongs to us, Fuku explained to Itachi in a sadistic manner before leaving and ordering doctors to enter and put Itachi into a coma for the procedure. The flat of Grimmjow and Naruto later that evening. Beads of sweat appeared down Grimmjow's torso as he thrashed furiously in his sleep. This happened almost every night, the same nightmare, the same dream. A Zeon appeared from behind and slashed her across the back, causing her to fall helplessly into the water below. Grimjow found himself hovering above Karakura town, with the streets below flooded with water, the sky obscured by rain clouds, and enormous sharks ruling the water below. Without thinking, Grimjow Sandio in front of the smiling man and swung violently at him, only to discover that his blows went straight through him and he kept that smile on his face. When Azian stated, "Foolish Grimjow, you may have killed me but I've still beaten you," Grimjow fired a Sero at close range. "Why are you unable to murder me?" Grimjow unsheathed the Pantera and put it into his stomach, but when he looked, he saw that Harrison was there instead of Azian, who was grinning. "Why are you unable to exact revenge on me?" She caressed his bony cheek while speaking in a monotone. Grimjow bolted from his bed, looking to his doorway to see Naruto. He was perspiring profusely, his fists were clenched, and Pantera was writhing with rage inside its sheath. "Dad, another nightmare?" Before approaching his father, Naruto inquired. "Yes, but don't be concerned about me. I'll be fine," Grimjow remarked, giving his son a hug. "You've gotta go to bed," Grimjow smirked. Naruto grinned before scuttling up next to his father and falling asleep. At this, Grimjow grinned because he had a feeling he hadn't had since Horrible. He was no longer hollow, instead, he felt complete. "Give up." Iruka yelled to his students that it was yet another day at the academy, while his partner Mizuki laughed at his friend's plight. "It's time to call rolls." He received a HN in return, said Sasuke Uchiha. Then, two women burst through the door, trapping each other. "So that I can sit alongside Sasuke-kun, move Ino pig," Sakura shouted to the girl with the blonde hair. "He's mine, so shut up," the other girl shouted. Sweating, Iruka replied, "Well, that checks those two." Naruto Jaegerjaquez received no reaction. Crash. A blue-headed boy said, "Yo," as he walked through the wall next to the door. He was wearing a black jacket that was open down the middle, similar to his father's but different in color, with a metal shoulder plate in the shape of a fox head on his right side when the sleeves were rolled up. His Zanpakuto was sheathed across his back in a red-black sheath, and the pommel was shaped like a demonic skull. The grip was dark and metallic, with the word Akuma, demon, engraved on it. The guard was shaped like a demonic fox head, and the 16-inch blade emerged from its mouth. Naruto, the wall," Iruka murmured, with the majority of his face twitching, while Naruto wore a slack expression before turning his head to face Iruka. He answered bluntly, someone was already using the door, and then walked over to sit next to Shikamaru, who, as usual, passed out. Naruto kicked the Nara awake and yelled, "Wake the hell up you lazy bastard, you and my old man are so alike it's not even funny." Goo, 5, more. Minus SSS, Z's. Shikamaru nodded and went to sleep. "Get up!" Naruto shouted, causing the Nara to come to life. Shikamaru scratched his head and asked, K, what do you want?" He turned to see Choji approaching the three of them. "All right, now that you're both here, I have an idea. Every Espada needs a Fracione, according to my old dad. I want both of you to have more power and live longer." Naruto told the clan heirs, "If you agree, meet me in the forest next to the abandoned temple 2 miles east of the village." He then left and took a seat at random. "All right, we'll test your readiness to become ninja of the concealed leaf villager today in class. The first is a chakra reliance test. The second is a duel between two trainees in which neither genjutsu nor ninjutsu are permitted. In the third, a new regiment, 2 pupils engage in a kenjutsu combat that, of course, ends in first blood. Come down, Naruto Jaegerjaquez, Iruka said, as Naruto started to move ahead of Sandio in front of the man. Flying Thunder God. He is his son, Iruka gasped for a minute before snapping out of his reverie when he sensed Naruto's intense spiritual pressure combined with chakra. As Iruka and the majority of the students collapsed to the ground, Naruto half-lyingly said, "That's my chakra." "Oh, stop," Mizuki said, attempting to avoid falling through the floor, as Naruto grinned and let go of his strength. Iruka gasped, "Now. A match between two students, Kiba, get down here." The brazen lad grinned in front of him, and his well-known Akamaru went to their rival. Naruto tilted his head slightly to the side as Kiba assumed his battle position and said, "You should just give up, you clanless loser." Naruto grinned and replied, "Clanless is yeah. What do you think Jaegerjaquez meant?" Before Akamaru and Kiba simultaneously charged at him, he uttered those words. Naruto leapt into the air, grabbed the man and the beast by the throat, and then slammed them both into the ground, putting them out cold. The Uchiha heir descends upon command and picks up a flat, double-sided blade, China's, gentleman, sword. For those of you who are unfamiliar with weapons, impressive. Now the final test, a Kenjutsu mock. Sasuke Uchiha, come down. Give up, you loser. I'm an exceptional Uchiha. The world's most powerful clan. In the Nether Realm, a gorgeous woman with a strong build started to develop a checkmark that read, himself? Descended from Kami himself, Sasuke muttered pompously. You're gonna need a lot more than that toothpick to do me in, Naruto remarked as the tip of the sword turned bare and took on an almost crimson glow. Naruto sighed, gripped his blade securely, and slowly started to unsheath it. As Naruto sheathed his sword, Sasuke paused in the middle of his speech, saying, You arrogant loser, I am an Uchi. He laughed, but it was short. Lived as a spurt of blood emerged from his midsection and his sword slid in half, causing the Uchiha to drop to his knees and start breathing rapidly. You may have killed me. Naruto glared down at him with utmost disdain. How dare you? I'm an elite, the elite of the elites. I'll have you. Sasuke was interrupted once more when a dark red beam erupted, forcing him to hit the dirt, in order to dodge it, destroying a section of the academy. It's kind of ironic that you remind me so much of a man my dad told me about, Sosuke Aizen. Like you, this man was a haughty jerk who would murder his own teammate because they were under him in authority. He did, however, murder a very close friend, and you know what that friend did? Sasuke shook his head as Naruto glanced down at him. Well, that person put that piece of garbage to his rightful place in hell by killing him. Grimmjow, my old man, was that person. You understand where I'm heading with this, so let me sum it up. We're kind of like those two in that tiny towel. I'm going to kill you if you don't fuck off, Naruto snarled with a wicked smile before sending Sandio out of the academy. The shrine was deserted later that evening. You two made the decision to attend, huh? As Shikamaru and Choji emerged from the tree line, Naruto uttered those words. Shikamaru stated, yeah, let's get to this power boost, as Naruto walked up to the three. Before plunging both of his hands into each boy's chest, causing Rashi to encircle the group, Naruto said, a word of warning, this is gonna hurt like a bitch. When the light faded, Naruto grinned, pleased with his creation. Shikamaru had a small hollow hole in his upper chest, an Arankar jacket with fur lining, 2 matching oriental pistols, an eye patch, and a piece of mask, quite stark. Choji's complexion turned tan. A piece of mask covered his chin and lower jaw, his muscles and body grew significantly, he had a hollow hole in the middle of his chest, and he was wearing a typical Arankar costume. Yami Largo. Grimmjow stated, so that's who you picked as your Fracione, huh? They remind me of some people I used to know, as he addressed the group. Wow, this feels good, Shikamaru remarked, glancing at his weapons. Suddenly, a blue wolf materialized behind him, and Shikamaru thought he recognized the creature. Grimmjow, who appeared impressed with his son, remarked, you should know all the skills of the Arankar since Naruto made you hollows like the Sero. Grimmjow patted Naruto on the head and murmured, good job, which made him smile. I will finish what the fourth started, as the demon is recruiting. The gang of Arankar glanced at one another before Mizuki spoke, charging with the banned scroll over his back. Sero. It would be rough ninja to burn them. As Iruka announced the team placements, Naruto leaned back in his chair and moaned. He was not listening because he already knew which team he would be placed on. Flashback. Sero. The scroll on Mizuki's back was unharmed, but the 4 Arankar's shout sent a barrage of deep red energy beams that burned him entirely. Wow, that's hot, hot, hot. Grimmjow burst out laughing as Choji frantically yelled, jumping up and down and clasping his mouth where the Sero had spilled. Shikamaru exclaimed, wow, as he looked down at his smocking pistols, which then started to glow Rashi before changing back into a sword. He was now dressed in a standard Arankar costume with a jawbone around his neck. Before he could examine the scroll anymore, a group of Anbu approached them. Naruto knelt down where it was and thought, not even a burn mark. He traced his finger over its surface. Stop. Give up your weapons and move away from the scroll. Grimmjow stopped laughing and moved forward with his hands in his pockets while the masked caption talked while holding his sword. What if we don't? The caption's knees buckled as he remarked, letting go of some of his spiritual burden. While his comrades gave him a, are you fucking serious, look, he said, if you don't we will have no choice but to use force. Grimmjow smiled, and when Grimmjow smiles, it's best to flee. Grimmjow sighed in disappointment and waved his hands in the air as Naruto continued to inspect the scroll. Dad. All right, he said, I won't kill them. The Anbu sighed, unaware that he was holding it in, but it was swiftly sucked back in. Grimmjow took a step closer and muttered, but that doesn't mean I can't fuck him up. However, a big poof cut him off, disgusting the third Hokage. The Hokage saw Grimmjow smile and shuddered. Oh, thank Kami, all the Anbu exclaimed at once. These brigands killed a Kana shinobi and took the scroll, Hokage. Sama. Sarutobi gave the man a fierce look as the caption read. The Hokage glared at the guy who lowered his head in shame and replied, no they did not, I watched the entire event, and for giving false information to the Hokage, you are sentenced to a year's suspension. I think these brigands should be rewarded now that we've cleared up that minor irritation, Sarutobi stated, rank pay with an extra request. Naruto responded, okay Gramps, I want the three of us as an assigned team, gesturing back to Shikamaru and Choji. Whatever became of the two? Startled at the two clan heirs' metamorphosis, Sarutobi inquired. They were my Frasium. We already function as a team, my buddies. Naruto pushed his hands into his pockets and replied, we just need you to make it official. After giving it some serious thought, Sarutobi nodded and said, I think this could have more benefits, but it will disrupt the Shika-cho tradition. And we'll have to find you a Jonin team commander, Sarutobi remarked, still reflecting, before he burst out laughing. I believe I know just the women. Finish the flashback. Kiba Inuzuka, Sakura Horeno, and Sasuke Uchiha make up Team 7. Sakura cried out as Kiba snarled, Kakashi Hitaki will be your sensei. Hinata Hyuga, Shino Aburame, and Ino Yamanaka make up Team 8. Kurenai Yuhi will serve as your sensei. The location of all parties felt disrespectful. Why? Not thrilled with the placements? Hinata stammered to Ino. After his behavior yesterday, I don't give a damn if you're referring to Sasuke. She scoffed as she spoke. Team 10. Naruto Jaegerjaquez, Shikamaru Nara and Choji Akamichi. You sensei is. Before Iruka could finish speaking, a banner featuring the Konoha Snake Queen appeared in front of the window. She cried, the sexiest Kunoichi Enko Mitarashi is here, Team 10 move your asses to the Forest of Death now. Before erupting into a cloud of smoke that made everyone perspire. The apartment of Grimmjow and Naruto. Deep in contemplation, the former sixth Espada lay on his bed wearing nothing but sweatpants. He sighed as he glanced at the Pantera in its sheath in the room's corner. Out of nowhere, a female voice remarked, are we thinking back on the past? With a Sero charged in his palm, Grimmjow sat up. A woman he hadn't seen in almost 15 years suddenly materialized in front of him. Grimmjow lowered his hand and said, Kami? The hell you want? Before she sat on the side of the bed, she complimented him, saying, I came to say you've done a wonderful job as a parent. Grimmjow remarked cynically, yeah, he's a chip of the old black. With a faint smile, she remarked, he definitely takes after you greatly, that's for sure. Grimmjow got up from the bed and added, and we both know you didn't stop by just to give me a shout out. As she said, yes. I've come to alter out deal. The Arankar pushed her neck against the wall and charged a Sero at close range. He tightened his hold on her throat and whispered, I obviously must have misheard you. She slipped out of his hands like a ghost, and he forgot that she was the deity of everything. If you will let me finish, I am going to alter our deal. Instead of being reunited with you Shark Emperies in the next life, you shall be reunited in this life. She grinned. Grimmjow's mouth opened wide and his eyes grew big. He lowered his hand and absorbed the details. You have protected and trained the boy all of his life and now it will be rewarded, and Naruto needs a mother as well as a father figure, she replied. With a sorrowful smile, Kami added, I would be lying if I said it didn't bring a tear to my eye. I've seen your pain and nightmares for the past 15 years. With a hoarse-backed voice, he said, why? You can bring her back. Kami raised her hand and answered, yes, Espada, I can. A woman began to emerge from the blue water pool that had formed on the floor. She had her eyes closed and her arms wrapped around her exposed chest. The mask covering her face was no longer worn by the woman. 2 jagged scars were visible over her midsection. I've taken her hollow mask, but she still retains her powers. Now I take my leave. Kami disappeared in a flash of light. However, Grimmjow caught Hannibal as she fell forward. Her azul eyes opened slowly. Glancing at him, Hannibal murmured, Gee, Grimmjow? He nodded and grinned. Grimmjow put both of his arms around her body and pulled her into a tight hug after helping her stand up, but she stumbled for a second before their gazes locked once more. I've missed you, the entrance to the Forest of Death Gate. She said, okay, maggots. The test is simple, survive. 4 hours in the Forest of Death and I'll also be hinting you while you in there. Now go. As the three flashed their steps, creating an after image of them. Before jumping the barrier, Anko mumbled, that's new and unfair." After 3 hours and 55 minutes, Anko jumped off a limb to see the three of them encircled by enormous dead animals, including spiders and snakes. Naruto was sitting like a king atop a severed snakehead. Naruto shouted, "Yo Anko. Sensei, how we do?" Anko's eye twitched, and then he laughed darkly. Before hurling a kunai with an explosive tag attached to the snakehead, she remarked, "You still have 5 minutes." Naruto mumbled, "Fuck," before jumping off the exploding skull. No pun intended. Shoji sprang toward Anko, slamming his enormous fist into the ground where she stood. After flipping and landing on the enormous holder, Anko kicked him in the head, causing him to stumble to the ground. Shikamaru opened his mouth idly and released a Sero. The beam almost missed Anko as she rolled out of the way. "Hidden shadow snake hand," she said as she threw her palm forward, and then a barrage of poisonous snakes sprang out of her sleeve and toward the Nara heir, who sidestepped and struck his sword high, severing all of the heads. Anko was about to follow up when she was abruptly stopped by the icy sensation of a blade at the nape of her neck. Naruto smirked and sheathed the sword, saying, "Time's up Anko, sensei." Anko looked up at him. She smirked and disappeared in a whirl of leaves, saying, "Fair enough. Report to the Hokage Tower tomorrow to receive mission and tell your dad I said hi." Before he and his Fracione Flash stepped out of the trees, Naruto mumbled, Okay." The buried base of Orochima. The Sound Four were his personal bodyguards prior to the snake. Orochimaru briefed the team, who nodded, saying, "Good, you are all here. I want you four to scout out the island of Wave Country. I wish to set up a hideout there within the next few years." He dismissed them after saying, "And I trust you know what shall befall you should you fail. Either do this or die." Tayuya, the squad leader, thought as she got ready for the operation. She had no idea that she wouldn't be going back to Orochimaru at the end. The apartment of Naruto and Grimmjow's Naruto pushed the door open after jamming his set of keys into the lock. He grunted ferociously as he entered and smelled the food cooking. "Hey Dad, what's cooking?" he exclaimed as he ran off to discover Hallible seated at the kitchen table. She was dressed in baggy shorts and one of Grimm's shirts. Naruto sat at the table and inquired, "Friend of yours?" Hallible sank into a chunk of pork that Grimmjow had placed on the table, adding, "You could say that. She's also the third Espada." Recalling the moment Grimmjow initially told him about Tia, Naruto remarked, "Third Espada? Wait, you said she was dead?" With a ghostly smile, Tia remarked, "You are right, he does look like you." She held out her hand and said, "I'm Tia Hallible." Naruto accepted it. Hallible laughed as Naruto shook it and said, "Naruto Jaegerjaquez." Raising himself from the table, Naruto stated, "Well, I'm going to bed, night." He then proceeded to his room. After observing Naruto depart, Grimmjow focused on Hallible. With a note of bitterness in her voice, Tia questioned, "Who is his mother?" Grimmjow eyed Tia, who let out a little sneer, "He's not my biological son. His real parents died the day he was born." "Then why does he have similar Rashi to yours, and besides that without the whisker marks he's a spitting image of you?" she responded. Grimmjow explained that his eyes met hers until she averted them, got up from her seat, and turned her back. "Well, after Kami sent me here, I fought the demon that is sealed inside him and the Shinigami sealed him in. The real god of death, not those soul reapers, and when he did he took some of my Rashi and sealed it into the boy. It mixed with his chakra, and it infected the rest of his system. And that is why he is similar to me." With a roar, he took a quick stride ahead of her and pushed her up against the wall, locking her arms over her head. Grimmjow glared at her and stated, "I haven't been with a woman since you died." He leaned forward and kissed her, and after a few seconds, she kissed him back. He then moved down her neck and back to her eardrum. "Lemon begins." Then he whispered, "You are mine." The particular word he used the first time they were together made her freeze a little. He then proceeded to kiss her again before opening his mouth wide and slapping her neck, causing the moan she was suppressing to come out. Lifting her head back, she allowed him to mark her. He licked the blood with his cat-like tongue after biting down more forcefully and breaking the skin with his teeth. He groped her huge breasts after tracing his finger over her smooth tummy and sliding his hands under the shirt that clung to her body. Then, when she wrapped her long legs around his waist, he took her by the ass and withdrew his hand from her shirt. He went down the hall, kicked open the door to his bedroom, tossed her onto the bed, climbed back on top of her, and pressed his lips to hers once again. As he slowly pulled her tight shirt over her head and tossed it aside, Tia's hands moved around his midsection. He kissed her, then moved his tongue down her neck and collarbone, across her right breast, and finally nipped the nipple. He switched his focus to the left breast as she muttered his name, Grimmjow. He gave a satisfying groan as she clawed at his back, tracing his lip down till he reached her short lining. After licking her stomach, he chewed the lining and yanked his head sideways, ripping the garment off entirely. He moved his body such that his head was in her nether. As he kissed her inner thigh and then slid his tongue to her shaved pussy, Tia's body shuddered. After licking the tiny hair that had appeared, he slid his tongue to her door. Grimjow coated the outer wall and grinned as he felt her body shudder. He drove the tip of his tongue into her hole, making her bounce a little, because he didn't want to give her a chance to rest. He made her thrash on the bed by sliding it in and out till he felt her G-spot. He then started to tap his tongue on it a little, which made her thrash even more. She mumbled, I am, see, coming, as she stroked his blue hair, but as he started to spin it about, she grabbed a full palm and screamed somewhat as she approached. Grimjow lifted his body up to kiss her once more after eagerly swallowing her fluids. She glued her lips together a little and pulled her head away from the kiss. She said, so that's what I taste like, as Grimjow kept biting her neck. Then Tia took hold of his shoulders and turned him over. As he kicked off his jeans, she rubbed her hands over his scars. Before allowing gravity to take its toll and impaling herself, she arched her back and let her entry to hover above his firm manhood. Tia arched her back and released a deep mount from her neck as Grimjow grunted loudly. She started to softly glide up and down as Grimjow put his hands on her golden bronze thighs. As the burning sensation overtook her body, Tia arched her back even more. Grimjow chose to assert his dominance once more, flipping her onto her back before delivering a forceful thrust that caused her to gasp. He put his face in the crook of her neck as she put her arms around his neck. Grimjow's attack grew increasingly feral as his animal instincts took over. His low growl sent waves of pleasure through her body as he bit into her skin again. As she arched her back as his groans grew louder, she felt her climax becoming closer to her birth become more ragged till she poured more fluids on him and he filled her womb with his seed. He leaned back, kissed her, and began to pull himself away, but she clawed his back again. She closed her eyes and murmured, "Stay inside of me tonight." After giving her a nod, he moved to the spooning position and put his arm around her. Before going to sleep, she whispers, "I missed you too." The end of the lemon. After 3 weeks, Hokage's office. The furball was thrown upon the desk, and Naruto snarled, "Old man. I will kill that cat if I see it again." As soon as the elderly guy finished saying, Right. I have another D rank." Naruto's Rashi stopped the entire structure. Sarutobi exhaled, "Oh, okay," and a rank, on his lips. A week ago Team 7 was sent on a simple C rank escort mission but it turned out because the client lied. "You and your team back them up," the Hokage said. After giving a nod, Naruto and his group departed the office. Before disappearing in a whirlpool of leaves, Anko remarked, "Damn Gaki, you know how to get results. We leave in an hour at the north gate." Grimjow's and Naruto's residence. In the center of his living room, Naruto appeared. Grimjow glanced up from back, messaging Tia to Naruto. Before Sony doing off, Naruto grinned and stated, "Me and my team got assigned a backup mission. I'll be back in at least 2 weeks, later dad." Grimjow responded, Okay," and returned his attention to Hannibal. Tia enjoyed the message and inquired, "So he knows that you're not his real father?" Grimjow smiled fatherly and replied, "Yep, but as far as I'm concerned he is my blood." She responded, feeling Grimjow dig deeper into her flesh before he murmured in her ear, "Back when we were serving under Azean I never thought that you, the most bloodthirsty among the Espada, would turn into a caring father. You should know by now, Tia, I haven't lost my touch." 2 days later, the Wave and Fire border. Reaching the border took less time than they had anticipated. Anko was at the rear, while Naruto was in the front with his Fracion on either side. The group halted when Naruto gave the order, "Wait." Then, he drew his sword and slashed at the tree line. Before every tree fell in two and began to scream, the wind rustled, making Naruto smile. "Holy shit!" Tayuya exclaimed, squatting on the ground with her teammates. But the twins were extremely fortunate to be divided in half. "Get the fuck out here or the rest of you fuckers die," yelled Naruto. The rest of the group left the tree lines. Naruto arched an eyebrow in response to Tayuya's mocking remark, "Okay dipshit, you got us out, now what?" As he examined her figure, he thought, "She's kinda cute." "This," he said, then took a quick step and reappeared in the same location. Naruto grinned back at Tayuya and gestured to her side. "Was that supposed to do something?" she said. Her four-armed teammate was as stiff as stone when she turned to look at him, but then numerous squires of blood burst from his torso. His entire body began to break apart into little cube pieces of flesh, leaving only a heap of meat. She glanced back at Naruto, who was pointing to her opposite side. The obese teammate's head rolled off his body as she cleaned her own. Fearfully, she turned to face the blue-haired murderer who had crept away from her. He appeared behind her, chopped her neck, and forced her to fall into him after saying, "And your sexy ass is coming with me." He gestured for his crew to continue going as he lifted her up in a bridal manner. Choji said, "Naruto, why not just kill her?" Observing her sleeping features, Naruto remarked, 1. She's hot as hell. 2. Have you noticed their head band? She could have some info for us. Yes, she's very adorable. A white-haired man arrived on the scene and sighed after the party had departed. He murmured, "Lord Orochimaru will not be pleased about this," and ran off. Team 10's camp that night. With her hands bound to a tree and locked above her head, Tayuya's eyes fluttered open and she started to thrash. She pulled on the chain for a few minutes before giving up and sinking to the ground with a sigh. Looking to her left, she saw a campfire a few yards away, and the smell of roasting meat made her mouth water. "Are you hungry? Fuck." She whipped her head at Naruto, who was leaning on the tree and eating a piece of meat, and yelled in shock. Her stomach growled as she yelled, "Fuck you, asshole." Naruto laughed, knelt down at her level, and extended the meal. He grinned as she snarled and then lunched on the flesh, gorging herself like a savage. He sat down beside her and remarked, "Damn, and I thought I had bad manners." Then she said, "Go to hell." She sneered at his response, like where your friends are right now. "I wasn't pals with them. I had to work with those jerks, even though I detested them." She whispered, letting her head strike the bark, "And now that snake bastard is going to kill me if you don't." She snorted when Naruto said, "I'm not going to kill you." Naruto laughed when she said, "Well fucking fantastic, my goddamn hero." "What the heck is funny, shithead? With venom?" she asked. "I've never met somebody who cusses more than me and my dad," said Naruto. She responded cynically, "Then give me a goddamn reward." "What is your name, by the way?" Naruto got up from his chair and requested. She said, "Tayuya, a fucking pleasure." He turned his back and started to leave after saying, "Well, I'm Naruto Jaegerjaquez." He smiled in the Jaegerjaquez style. "Hey, jerk." He turned his attention in her direction as Tayuya shouted out to him. "What?" She shivered and said, "Can you make me a fire? It's fucking freezing." He walked over to her and knelt down again, saying, "Nope." "Are you carrying a blanket?" Naruto sways his head nay and smirks as she asks in a desperate tone. Tayuya took a deep breath and then snarled between her teeth. Naruto arched an eyebrow, smirked, and sat next to her, scooting as close as he could. "Then get your ass down here and huddle with me." "Shithead. Now what?" "I'm chilly, so wrap your motherfucking arm around me," she screamed in his ear, and Naruto responded by putting his arm around her shoulders, grabbing her by the side, and drawing her in. She wriggled until she was using him as a pillow. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Don't get any ideas, shithead." Prior to her kicking him in the shin, he answered, "I already had ideas." "Do you believe Naruto's will be okay there?" Choji questioned Shikamaru about his attempt to fall asleep. Shikamaru whispered, "Yeah, he's just got a fetish for violent women." "Have I received a call?" Anko gave a playful shout. 2 days later, Wave Country. Tuzana's home. As the group gathered in front of the bride builder's home, Naruto moved forward, followed closely by Tayuya, who had a chakra chain fastened to both his hand and her wrist. When Naruto knocked on the door, a small child who appeared to be Sasuke appeared and the door opened. "What are you looking for?" His voice was quiet as he inquired. Naruto asked, "Where the cavalry kid?" Inari simply opened the door without responding, and they entered one by one. "Dude, look at the doors too small," Choji shouted from outside, and Naruto laughed loudly. Naruto, who was giggling inwardly, turned to face the steps that Team 7 was descending when Kakashi descended on crutches. "It's okay, big guy." Kakashi sighed and took a seat at the kitchen table as Naruto uttered the words, "Damn scarecrow, who fucked you up?" "Who's the girl and what are you doing, her freak?" Sasuke asked, lustfully glancing at Tayuya. Naruto responded, "Oh, she's none of your motherfucking business." Sasuke sneered and moved to speak, but Anko stopped him. "Yo Kakashi, brief us on the mission." "Well, is that Choji? One of the 7 swordsmen of the mist works for Gato, and Tuzana has to construct the bridge in a few days, at which point he will probably appear." As the giant was bragging over the tiny entryway, Kakashi pointed out the window and inquired, "Whatever happened to Shikamaru?" Kakashi inquired. Naruto responded, "Gave them a power boost and made them my Frasium." Sasuke leapt at the word, "power." He ordered that his bloodline be honored, saying, "You will give me that power." With his spiritual strain humorously released, Naruto responded, "I will give you a sword through the neck." Choji got big. "Damn it." Kiba screamed as he peered out the glass, but the giant's fist violently struck him through it. "I'm big boned, damn it." "All right, cough." However, Kakashi questioned, "Who is the girl Naruto?" "This is Tayuya." "Chan. What the fuck did you just call me?" she shouted. "I called you, Chan, women." Naruto grinned in response. She shouted back, "Oh, what now? I should call you, Kun." With their foreheads pushed Anima like against one another, he screamed back, flames blazing in the backdrop, "After how you used me like a pillow 2 days ago, I wouldn't be surprised." "Fuck yourself. I'm going to fuck you." They shouted at one another as the flames grew larger and everyone's perspiration decreased. "Cough. Cough. Cough," was Kakashi's cry, extinguishing the flames and restoring order. "As I mentioned earlier, this is Tayuya from Sound, and she will be able to provide information." Naruto told everyone, "Back the fuck off, she's my prisoner." Sakura screamed and charged at her, but she sidestepped and slammed her foot into Sakura's back, causing her to crash into the wall. "When we get back to Konoha, the council will make you my breeding machine for my bloodline." Sasuke was about to continue, but she kicked him in his little Uchiha. "Is this your group? I defeated the 2 of them, and I'm in handcuffs." Smirking at Kakashi, who had his head lowered in embarrassment, Tayuya remarked, "Well, I think that's enough excitement for one day. You must be tired, so why don't you all head up to bed?" Tusami replied with a smile. Z's came out of Shikamaru's skull seconds after he stated, "Yeah, I'm tired." He then collapsed on the couch. Enko answered, "Yeah, night Gakis." He then went up the steps, followed by Kakashi, who left Team 7 unconscious on the ground. "Where do I sleep, then?" Tayuya inquired. "Dangling the chain," Naruto answered, "with me of course." "What? Can I have a bed of my own?" Looking down, she murmured, "It's not like I'm going back to the Sound. I'd end up dead," until she felt the shackles come off. "All right, I believe you." As he ascended the stairs to his room, Naruto remarked, "You can sleep on your own tonight." Tayuya was left speechless. Later that evening, when Naruto felt additional weight at his side, his eyes snapped open, and he saw that Tayuya was staring at him. Naruto remarked, "Though you wanted to sleep alone." She whispered, "It was cold." She displayed her headband with a mark through the musical notes and remarked, "I've decided that I want to go to Konoha of my own free will." She scooted closer to him after saying, "Now shut up, shithead, I'm tired." He confidently put an arm around her body and drew her in, and to her surprise, she sighed with pleasure. The following morning, to Tayuya's dismay, Naruto heard a crash coming from downstairs and got up from the bed. Groggily, she muttered, "What the hell, shithead?" Flash-stepping off the bed, he exclaimed, "We got company downstairs." Downstairs, Inari and his mother were forced into a corner by 2 would-be samurai. The tan one remarked, "Hey, she looks good." Unsheathing his katana, the other responded, "Yeah, but we got orders." He started to move forward but halted. "What's up with you, fucks? Hello? Hello?" The one with the tan shouted to his buddy, who crockled and suddenly split in 2. "My goodness." He turned around and pointed behind him, noticing Naruto leaning against the wall brandishing a bloody blade. The man turned to see Tayuya brandishing a knife, which she pushed into his lower jaw before taping him in the chest with her finger, causing him to tumble backward. She muttered, "Pig," before turning to face the terrified family. "Are you two okay?" As he put on his jacket, Naruto spoke. The women said, "Yes, your team is at the bridge." Tayuya was stunned when Naruto turned to her and gave her the flute. Naruto nodded and added, "You'll need a weapon." She smiled and added, "Let's fuck em up, Naruto." The bridge. While Choji and Shikamaru were playing poker off to the side, Kakashi and Anko were engaged in combat with Zabuza, and Sasuke and Kiba were imprisoned in a dome of ice mirrors, frantically attempting to battle the masked ladies. The battle was broken up when Naruto and Tayuya came via Sandino. "It's almost time." As Anko and Kakashi reassembled at their side, Anko yelled, "Why didn't you two fight?" Naruto inquired. Shikamaru answered idly, "We only take orders from you, and besides they had it handled." "What's the matter?" Terrified of a fight, Naruto grinned and drew his sword in response to Zabuza's challenge, pointing the executioner's blades at them. He paced in Zabuza's direction and said, "Choji, Shikamaru got help them get out of the dome via Bala." Naruto pointed his blade at him and stated, "I've always wanted a kenjutsu fight with a swordsman of the mist." "All right, buddy, I'll fight with you, but don't be afraid to confront me because I won't." Would you like to know that the majority of swordmen are unaware of the name of their weapon's soul? Let me show you. Zabuza then put both hands on the pommel of the enormous cleaver and stabbed it into the earth. A flash of light appeared as Zabuza shouted, "Execute!" Kabikirabocho, which caused the bridge to tremble and the yellow rashi to fade off the weapon. When it faded, Zabuza's butcher knife transformed into a double-bladed spear that was 3 feet wide on both ends. His bangis faded into a metallic mask shaped like a demon mouth. His arms were covered in armor sleeves. His chest was bare, and his legs were armored in the same marital style as his arms. Naruto burst out laughing, much like Ichigo did when he revealed his mask to Grimmjow. It's finally a challenge. Before reversing his grip and pressing his fingertips into his own blades, Naruto screamed. I apologize, I had a pole along back, but I changed my mind. Kurama, reap. Before the black rashi exploded from the weapon and engulfed Naruto, he murmured this. When it dispersed Naruto, he saw a tall figure with a fox's skeletal skull wearing a black hood that traveled down and meshed into black armor with a red aura. His legs were covered in a dark armor mesh with a robe that covered his lower body but split in front, and 9 skeleton tails flowed behind him. A huge halberd was in his right hand. The shaft was a spinal column with black chains hanging off it. At the tip was a skull with a black spear tip emerging from the mouth. On the front was an upward, curved crimson axe, and on the front was a downward, curved scythe outlined with bones. As a matter of fact, Zabuza, I did. Naruto's voice was sharp and demonic as he yanked the spear from the ground and spun it in the air. He grabbed Kumura, his weapon's name, and held it along the length of his arm before charging the weapon's tip, causing sparks to fly across the concert. When he was close to Zabuza, he spun on his heel and used his momentum to grip the shaft with his other hand before slamming the weapon upward. Zabuza blocked it, but he was launched into the air, where he followed, raising Kumura and letting go with one hand to allow the inertia to follow up with a straight slash. Zabuza flipped over and spun, striking Naruto in the back and sending him forward as he landed on the bridge. Zabuza's eyes widened as he regained his footing and stood on the air, as in the Bleach fights, and opened his skeletal mouth, creating a buildup of black energy. Gran Rei Sero. That portion of the bridge was destroyed when Naruto yelled, directing the enormous black beam at the swordsman who had jumped out of the way. Zabuza struggled to get out of the way, but as Naruto materialized behind him with Kumura pushing, time seemed to slow down. Currently, down the bridge, the sight of her master's demise brought Haku's bloodied face to life. "Lord Zabuza," he yelled, and she flew to his defense with the last of her chakra. Zabuza's body trembled in anguish as he looked down at his chest and saw the entire end of the halberd dipped in blood. He raised his gaze as Bluer shushed past him. Haku coughed up a lot of blood before letting her head down, and her breath caught when she looked down at her own chest and saw a column of bones impaled in her. Zabuza turned his head as she mumbled, I failed, and then went limp. He wheezed out, Haku, I never told you, I loved you like the daughter I never had, before turning to face the sky. Ironically, the sword stabbed him as well, even though the female had attempted to absorb the hit for him. Naruto cocked his head in their direction. He raised the weapon and made their bodies slide, saying, 2 birds, 1 stone. He shouted, slinging his weapon and flinging both of his bodies in front of Gato and his thugs, onto the ground. Oh no, Gato grinned and remarked, good thing I have an ace, before noticing Tayuya. I want the red head, boys. They charged after Gato cried, take her alive, and I'll give you a turn after I'm done, ha ha ha. With a snarl, Tayuya started playing a song that put the majority of them in a trance. In front of her, Naruto said, over my dead body. Sero, Gran Rei. Sending another beam at the horde of mercenaries, he killed most of them, but not all of them lost limbs. He stepped to the next one, flashed, and swung Kumura, connecting and cutting the man in 2. He continued to gain speed, slicing through thugs like paper, and he defeated. No, he ruthlessly massacred each one of them until he reached the half-man himself. Instead of killing the man, Naruto brought him in front of Tayuya by sliding his halberd across his back and walking in front of him while arching his bone tails and trusting them all to come forward. 2 of them were impaled in his left arm, and 2 more in his right arm and both legs. She smiled, then drew a kuni out, inserted a thruster into his lower abdomen, and slowly slid it upward until she struck his collarbone. Naruto said, kill him, Tayuya. She dropped the weapon, drove her hand into his chest, grasped his heart, and tore it out while it was still beating. Naruto threw his corpse off the bridge and changed back to his normal form. The two teenagers, drenched in blood, began to fight until Naruto gave her a forceful kiss, which she angrily returned. After they parted ways, Naruto murmured in her ear, "You are mine."
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.